Our next speaker is Armand Belanger, the manager of the East Interlake Watershed District, where he has worked for the last 13 years. He's developed 4 integrated watershed management plans and has overseen the delivery of many programs. Today, Armand will be discussing the naturalization projects that the district completed at the City of Selkirk Gaynor Family Library and the Gimli High School. Armand?
Thank you for having me here today. My name's Armand, and I'm a conservationist. Am I at the right meeting? Are there any other conservationists or wildlife enthusiasts or nature lovers out there? I don't see everybody's hands up. Have I chosen the wrong career path? But I do feel like that I'm surrounded by friends and family at conferences like this, and it's just really nice to come back to a conference after being on hiatus for so long. You know, this is where we gain our energy again, this is where we get inspired, and then we go out, and then we fight a good fight and try to solve all the worldly problems that are on the screen. I gave it away. So I thought today I would talk about 2 fun projects, and I thought, well, these were fun projects. Hopefully it'll be a fun presentation as well. 2 projects where we got to utilize fire and goats in urban naturalization projects. And these projects are great because it's everything that we care about, and it's everything that we love as conservationists, naturalists, and wildlife lovers. And we know the power of, giving wildlife back, putting nature back. And we know the best things are the native grasses and flowers. They're powerful tools that we have in the Conservation Handbook. They're so powerful that we know native grasses and flowers, they're the best pollinators. They're the best habitat. They're the best nutrient absorbents. They're the best at turning concrete fields into sponges to absorb. Just the best, and we love them. And why are they the best? I gave it away because of the root structure. They're phenomenal. They go so deep into the ground. Now, when we stand on a prairie grassland, we know that what we see above us is beautiful with all the plants and animals and organisms, but we can respect that while we're standing there, we're standing on a rainforest of activity underneath our feet. That we're just coming to understand, really, what it's all about underneath our feet. And that movie, The Avatar, anybody see that movie? I think it's coming to light that it's way more possible than we actually understood about the powers of the root structures and the participation that plants have. But as much fun as it is to plant these and understand the power of native grasses and plants and animals, it's really fun in the management system where we get to try to burn it to the ground or trample it to death. So those are my 2 activities I would show. And we'll see, that goat looks like he's passing over and dying, but he's just full and did his job. Now the 2 projects we'll look at, on the left is the City of Selkirk Gaynor Family Library, and this was a great project to work on because it brought in so many people. And these are little projects, but they have such great impact. They're having an impact on the local scale with the biodiversity and the wildlife and improving the water, but they also have an impact just as an educational platform. We took advantage at the Gaynor Family Library because the Red River Planning District is also in that building, which I might talk about later. And so it's a place where the Red River Planning District can look out the back door and say, see, this could be urban stormwater management, and it's done quite well. And at the Gimli High School, this was a project that we heard that the students initiated. They initiated it through the Caring for Our Watershed program that Amanda talked about yesterday, and they really progressed that project forward in ways that I couldn't even imagine. We have 2 little busy bees in high school in that picture. They're either picking weeds or picking seeds. I don't know which one. But those are 2 projects we'll talk about. We'll begin with the Gaynor Family Library. It's a marvelous building. It's big, and they want to build it sustainability. They built large windows on the south facing, so it absorbed all the passive heat coming in. But also when you're reading a book in the back of the library, you're still getting that vibrant sun. That's so great when you're reading. And it's got geothermal heating, energy efficient light bulbs, everything's just to the top. But they also wanted the landscape to be just as efficient and green as the inside of the building. So all the water that runs off the rooftop and then through the parking lot then goes through the native grasses and flowers that we planted with a bioswale that slows it down. After they were done construction, about 2015, we did some soil samples, and the nutrients, there was none to be found. It was pretty much clay, white clay and a hard pan clay. So luckily, the district was working with Compost Stages Manitoba at the time that was coming into the Interlake and turning cattle manure piles into beautiful compost. So we were really happy that we got to connect some rural programming with some urban programming as well. The farmer, Scott Duguid, donated the manure, and we spread it onto the field, on a portion of the field in the back of the library, just to really, we took that cattle manure, and we really wanted to beef up the site. My kids groaned so loud. And then kind of a test site where we didn't put any amendments there. And this is, I want to take note on this. It's that white, it looks like there's no minerals whatsoever. It's hard pan. And at first I didn't think we were going to do it because the director, Ken, who was a great partner in this project, he allowed us to do the back of the library into native grasses, and this was in the front near the highway. And at the last minute, he's like, no, do it there as well, Armand. And I didn't have much hope for the area because it was so, and I didn't know which way the water was going to flow as well. I thought it might get flooded out. Needless to say, we seeded in the area on Friday, June 13th of 2014, I think. And we seeded a good diversity of native species, over 20 different flowers, 7 different native grasses, and we, both cool season, warm season, some wet types, some dry types, because we had that bioswale going down. Seeded it, harrowed it, packed it, and then we're really lucky in the Interlake because we have 2 greenhouses that devote themselves to native flowers and grasses. So there's one in Toulon called Prairie Flora, another one in East Selkirk called Prairie Originals, thank you. And then there's Amy there helping us. We wanted to beef up the site again, and we put some plugs in next to the path. So we wanted to look good. If there's anything I suggest, if you want a really good take, make sure that it just rains perfectly right after you're done seeding. We had a great rain that came right after seeding. We're done. John Morgan, another great resource in the Interlake, was done seeding at 9 p.m. and then it just rained. And that gorgeous rain, that just nice light rain all weekend, saturated the soils. And then within less than a month, we had great uptake. Our plugs were doing well, our grasses were doing great. The library was helping out manicuring the site. There's a few areas that you can still see the ground, but that was just overtaken by this time. Now to me, this is what urban water management could and should look like. There's one of my favorite native flowers, purple prairie clovers. It's part of the pea family, so it's those natural fertilizers in the soil, and the systems go really down. But the bone of the, if anybody knows, you can pick up the leaves and rub them in your hands and smell, and the gorgeous smell that comes out of them, somewhat like mandarin oranges. This is that site where we didn't put any manure. And of course, the native grass as well, because it will look like after the glaciers receded and left. There was no soil we found. There's no nutrients in it. So native grasses do really well very competitive in soils that you wouldn't even think you would get a crop out of. And there's bare spots in this one, but this was just shortly after the seeding. Now, 5 years later, it's full of life, like this. And these sites like this are very important for so many different species that we don't even see. Monarch butterfly, we planted several different types of milkweed there and they find it a home. And it's just wonderful going to the site, helping maintain the site, and seeing the benefits right there, right then. All the species from monarch butterfly to deer to frogs, to crickets and grasshoppers. And then we're pretty selective. We don't want some weeds in there, so we're pulling some sweet clover out to get rid of it. But those pesky little monarch butterflies, they would eat the milkweed, but then put their chrysalis on the sweet clover that we're getting rid of. So we're in a call, what should we do? We just kind of very carefully put it back, and we saw a chrysalis there. Another species just to the right, that's Canada milk vetch, another perfect natural fertilizer. We'd have these sites everywhere across the area, because in the East Interlake Watershed District, we have a number of urban areas, Selkirk, Gimli, Toulon. There's another great place in Stonewall, the Ruby Row, if you've ever been there. And whenever we get a call for education, we'll take the students right to the site. We'll get an expert out there, like Kelly from Prairie Originals there on the left, and teach the kids just the give them inspiration and knowledge and know that if we make room for nature and ecology, it'll pay off in the long run. There's room everywhere. Here it's about the 4th year with the native grasses, and there's Manitoba's provincial grass, a big blue stem, and Cameron standing next to it. So we know it's about time to do our final management for this site. John Morgan came out. He's very adamant about the importance of fires on native grasslands, and he was able to help out on this site. It was a little lucky the fire department came there too, because we just, John fellow, but we just had little squirt guns to kind of keep it in bay. But luckily the fire department has, they're happy to help out. And then shortly after the fire, just bustling with life again. Just green, gorgeous grasses and flowers, and my kids, Madeline on the left, Oscar on the right, standing in front of a beautiful patch of cordgrass, which is a wet species that we planted within the bioswale. One thing I forgot to mention is also the educational signs that we put at the Gaynor Family Library to let people know what they're looking at, let them know how powerful ecology is. And those interpretive panels were designed by Heather Hinham, and if you get a chance to work with her, please do, she's phenomenal. Now, if you're not sold yet, this is what it looks like in a drought. I mentioned on a part of the area at the Gaynor Family Library, there was just normal grass, and in the other area, there's vibrant, green, native species. And on the left, you walk into it, it just crunches on your feet. It sounds horrible. Trees are wilting, and then we know that there's no life within the soils. And in times like this, you have to water it. You have to put so much resources in it on the side on the left. And then in times when there's lots of water, you got to spray it. And we know that the spray kills that beneficial bacteria and organisms that live in the soil as well. New to the Gaynor Family Library, some local artists have really taken the initiative to another aspect to the urban prairie. And they developed 4 panels, represent the medicine wheel, and recognize the missing and murdered Indigenous women across Canada. And the outside, it looks like a turtle coming out of the ground. It represents Turtle Island, where we all live. And then there's some rocks for the head and feet. It's coming out great. The second project that I had the luxury of working on was at the Gimli High School. Like I mentioned, this was preparing for our work that the kids brought. Here's my daughter on the left-hand side. Construction of the project was about November 2014, I believe. And then the bottom left-hand gives you an idea of how many people it takes to put in a little project like this that has a big impact. The school division, the municipality, the school board, school trustees, the students, Ducks Unlimited, staff at East Interlake Conservation District at the time. Well, one really important aspect was just a great teacher. She was so inspirational to these students, but I believe she was so inspirational to me as well. Gimli High School is where I went to school, and I'd just like to recognize Armand Belanger for putting so much work into this. Into the students, making students believe about the power of ecology, believing about the power of nature. If we put it in and find places for it, it'll pay off for us in the long run. That is about a great pollinator strip that I've ever seen coming out of the grasslands that we planted. There's a picture of construction, and Cheryl Bailey, you get a better picture of her on the bottom left. Really believing the students there, showing them the vision of what we're going to see in the near future, and it really paid off. And the top right-hand corner is a picture of the area before the wetland was in. And if you went 17 years before that, you might have saw me walking across this field going to town at lunchtime or something. And then it's just a great opportunity to bring students to these areas to get them involved and teach them about the powers of ecology and nature. These sites like this are phenomenal for us because we get to plant them, and then we get to pick the seeds and then use those seeds at other projects that we use. Or sometimes we use the seeds before COVID, where we used to have public events and be able to hand them out. My point today is this year, plant some native and grasses wherever you can, if there's any message from this presentation. Because what you see in the end is beautiful wildlife, beautiful formation, and everything is according. It's a good chance to take, this is the International Joint Commission, and I'm showing the front end of the project, but there's a little secret on the back end of the project. Some of the grasses didn't do too well, kind of a weedy mess. But even we've tried a few different applications to address this weedy area, and here, right, you can see we're putting down some plastic mulch, and we're gonna smother them, then we're gonna lift it up, and then we're gonna seed it again. But even within that weedy mess, there is still a lot of form and function. There's some huge bergamot plants that were growing, and the bees were so active around them. It was remarkable. Me being a conservationist, I was like, well, let's go around it. Let's not kill those with bees. It's just phenomenal to watch. It did take some work, and nobody really complained about picking the weeds, but I realized it was about the time to get some external resources in there to help us out. And we did a fire at the Selkirk, and we were going to do a fire at the high school, but there was some droughts there. I talked to the fire marshal. I said, are you okay with us having a fire in the high school? So he was pretty cool about it, to say. But because of the fire danger the previous years, we decided to bring some goats in. And goats really simulate what was happening in the prairies before there were so many people here, and bison would be roaming the prairies and working up those landscapes. The farmer was happy to bring them out. And those are probably the happiest kids to ever go to school in the summertime. It was July that we brought them in, and at first you couldn't even see them within the landscape because the grasses were so high. And most of these photos I stole off the Instagram because it was, we put the goats in there on Friday, and then everybody was talking about them on Instagram or Facebook or any other social media. And the guardians, like the goat guardians who took care of the goats while they were there, allowed people to come in and pet the goats, feed the goats, and the goats, I think, thought they were something pretty special by the end. They were getting a great diet and getting all fat up. The next part. It took about 3 days. There they are. If you remember the first picture of the goat falling over, I think that's well represented here. They just fell over full. We did have one incident that I don't usually tell too many people about the goats. And I was running by Saturday morning, and the goats were all in there. I was pretty happy about that, but they were kind of acting a little sheepish. I was like, well, maybe I should go check on that later on. So on my run, came over, and one goat was stuck on the other side of the fence. His poor little horns stuck in the fence. And he looked at me, I looked at it. He said, well, are you gonna get me out of this? So I went over and got him out. There wasn't too much happened, but the goats were acting pretty peculiar that day. I didn't think much about it until I told my wife, and then she told the people at her office, and then her people at her office said, you know what? I think I saw somebody post something like this on Snapchat. Unfortunately, the bar is a couple doors down, just over on the other side of the trees, and they were playing drinking games that night at the Viking in Gimli. Have you been there? I know there are a few managers been there. And then he came, he thought it was a good idea to jump the fence, chase the goats, and one goat got stuck in the fence. I told the farmer he was pretty upset. He wanted to find out and hunt out this person and give him due diligence there. But that was the only incident. Knock on wood. I'm going to do it again because I know next time I do it, there's going to be way better security. On the other side of the trees, the RCMP station are making their new house there. So this is what it looked like during a drought. On the left-hand side, just the normal yard at the high school. On the right-hand side are native grasses. There it is after. Look at me. This is the bonus one. If you ever come down to 74 First Avenue in Gimli, I could talk about this other naturalization project that we had just on the side of our building. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Armand. I feel so powerful. I stand up and you're like wrapping it up instantly. It's pretty cool. Thank you.